Frank Fletcher was one of the most exciting brawlers of the early 1980s, getting featured on ESPN before graduating to be the weekend warrior on NBC TV. He was an oddity in that his mother was the loudest person in the audience, always getting camera time as she led the crowd to chant his fitting nickname. Frank Fletcher came from a boxing family. His uncle, Dick Turner, was a welterweight contender in the 1960s, who credited Fletcher's mother, Lucille, with giving him the finer points of the sweet science. Lucille got interested in boxing as she grew up listening to Joe Louis's fights on the radio. She became pregnant with her first child at 15 and would go on to have 8 children in total, but Frank's father would leave the family when Frank was 6 years old. Frank would have 2 other brothers that would join him in the fight game, Anthony and Troy. Anthony would become a lightweight contender who would beat future champion Livingstone Bramble, while the youngest brother Troy would become the Pennsylvania State Bantamweight champion. But Frank would become the most well-known and notorious. His own brushes with the law would start at the age of 8 when he was arrested for breaking into a car. "I started stealing when I was knee-high to a hoppergrass," Fletcher recalled in a Ring magazine interview. He spent most of his youth in reform schools and 2 years at Pennsylvania's Holmesburg State Prison after an assault charge. His mother, Lucille, tried different methods of discipline, even going so far as to hold Frank's hand over the flames of a kitchen burner, but nothing discouraged the incorrigible young man from a life of crime. Fletcher said, quote, "I've had so many problems in my life that I've often thought that the only place you can get peace of mind is in a graveyard somewhere. And for 15 to 20 years, I was in and out of jail. Jail was my second home. There was nothing to do. I didn't like working for nobody. I didn't want to get a job. I was stealing, taking things. Why do most people stay in trouble? Because they like it." Fletcher would be arrested over 27 times from age 8 to 21, until finally on May 17, 1975, the 21-year-old Fletcher stabbed the man in his upper back with a butcher knife. When his mother came to visit him in jail, she said, "All your brothers, they're boxing." Inspired by his brother Anthony in particular, Frank would take up the sport upon his release. He already looked like a fighter. He had his front teeth knocked out after he got into a jailhouse brawl with an inmate who had been a professional boxer. He also had a scar that ran across his nose, courtesy of being attacked by someone with a razor blade in the streets of Philadelphia. Frank initially turned pro under the ring name of Monty Honeyboy Montez. In his first 7 fights, he was only paid $200 per bout. Seeing this as a lack of financial incentive, Frank wasn't taking the sport too seriously, and the lure of the streets beckoned again. More trouble with the law ensued as Fletcher would approach a woman named Laura Tillery and try to intimidate her from testifying against him for a previous offense. Fletcher would fire a gun at her while she stood on her porch, punch her in the face, then shoot her in both legs as she lay on the ground, somehow avoiding a prolonged prison sentence. Fletcher would get his big break in the ESPN middleweight tournament of 1980. When one of the original fighters dropped out, Fletcher was sent in as a replacement. He would proceed to win the TV title. He dropped his ring name of Honeyboy Montez, and after his knockout over Jerome Jackson, he officially became Frank the Animal Fletcher. His coming out party to the NBC TV audience would occur on June 14, 1981, against Norberto Sabater, as Fletcher would win the vacant USBA middleweight title in an exciting fight. During this bout, the country would be introduced to his mother, Lucille, who showed up with a megaphone with animal stickers plastered on its sides. More televised wins followed, and Fletcher became an immediate fan favorite. On June 20th, 1982, Fletcher would face his biggest test against Clint Jackson. Jackson was a 1976 Olympian with a brawling fighting style that mirrored Fletcher's own. The two would make for a bout that made viewers feel as if they were watching gladiators fighting in the Roman Colosseum.
Busy, able to break the fighters. We now have 15. So it goes the distance, and some more.
Fletcher would revel in the spoils of victory, spending his first hefty paycheck on a Lincoln Town Car. Freddie Pacheco and NBC wanted him back as soon as possible, and 4 months later, he would take on James Hard Rock Green. It was billed as a super fight for hardcore fans, as both men were in-your-face sluggers who never took a backward step. True to form, they delivered a Pier 6 brawl. The win put Fletcher on the precipice of a title shot. In February of 1983, he would be matched against Wilfred Scipion, with the winner to get a shot at Marvelous Marvin Hagler for the middleweight crown. A 7-figure payday awaited Fletcher, but Scipion was more technical than any fighter Fletcher had faced. With his mother ringside shouting the phrase, "dirty taxis," to describe what she saw as the dirty tactics Scipion was using, Fletcher's opponent was simply too polished, and the animal lost the decision. What followed after the defeat was a fast and cruel fall from grace. His boxing career in shambles, Fletcher would go on the lam after committing various assaults and violating his parole. He would call a Philadelphia sports writer, Elmer Smith, to accompany him to the jail where he would turn himself in. He also wanted Smith to announce for him that he was retiring from boxing. While inside the jail, Fletcher would punch a correctional officer, struggling with him until he was restrained by the other guards. His brother Anthony also fared no better in staying out of prison. Anthony would be given a death row sentence after killing a man named Vaughn Christopher. Anthony claimed that the killing was done in self-defense, but prosecutors believed him to be a member of a street gang called the JBM, the Junior Black Mafia. Anthony would be convicted on the testimony of what he described as a dubious informant. He remained in prison for over 28 years before his appeal was finally heard. Anthony then pled no contest to third-degree murder, and a judge resentenced him to 12.5 to 25 years. Since Anthony had already served more than the 25-year maximum, he was ordered to be released. Meanwhile, Frank could not stay out of trouble after yet another release from prison. In July of 1993, Fletcher was arrested after entering a video store and threatening the owner with a gun. In February of 1995, he was shot multiple times on a West Philadelphia street corner, but survived the attack. Frank the Animal Fletcher is yet another cautionary tale of a fighter who couldn't contain his violence strictly to the ring. But he can't be classified as a could have been, as his fighting style was simply not suited for a long tenure in the sport. But his 3-year run in the early 1980s remained etched in the minds of those who witnessed his battles.
You're ready to go anywhere in the middleweights, huh?
That's right.
Good luck. You are an animal, as they said. You have strength and you have courage.
Thank you.
Thank you.